At the time of making this video, Spider-Man 2 came out around 2 weeks ago and I finished the main story within a week. For me, this is one of the quickest playthroughs I've ever done. With it being quick for me personally, I still didn't rush through a single thing within the game. I think I ended the main story at 70% overall completion, which is pretty good, and I only have a few side missions and collectibles to still get. But why am I making this video? For me, I grew up a huge fan of the Batman Arkham games, in particular Arkham City. To this day, it is still one of my favorite games of all time, and objectively, I think it is one of the best games ever made. With recently playing Spider-Man 2 though, Insomniac gave Arkham City a run for its money. Somehow they made a game that almost rivals the best superhero game ever made. Of course, this is all subjective and a lot of you may disagree with me, but I really do think that Spider-Man 2 is an incredible game. In this video, I want to talk about what makes this game so good and why I hold it to such a high regard. If you're new to the channel and enjoy the review style of videos, consider subscribing. I'm trying to reach 1,000 subs by the end of the year, and it would be really cool to have some of you join me on this YouTube journey. Also, if you disagree with anything in this video, let's talk about it in the comments. I love hearing what y'all think of the game I talk about in the video and the different opinions all of you have on whatever I'm saying. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed the video and let's get right into it. Spider-Man 2 begins with a boss fight that I kept on comparing to the Kronos fight in God of War 3. It was this massive battle with Sandman and all his sand minions, and it was pretty cool seeing New York City being covered in sand. Overall, it was something I did not expect so early in the game, and it allowed Peter and Miles to show off their iconic abilities and even showcase some new tech that the two acquired since the previous games. This idea of adding on to the previous games is something I wanted to talk about, and it's something that Insomniac does perfectly. They take what makes the other Spider-Man games so great, and they keep improving on the things that were either lackluster or they implement gameplay designs that add on to the experience. Leading up to Spider-Man 2, I had no clue how they were going to make Peter be on the same level with Miles' electricity abilities. They showcased the abilities immediately during the Sandman boss fight with Peter having these spider claws on his back. With him getting this new tech, there was also dialogue that stated that Peter used Dr. Octavius' research to create these new spider claws. And I thought it was pretty cool how they implemented this kind of story-driven idea to make the ability make sense. And although they aren't really abilities like Miles, it was still a really cool feature and something that made the character gameplay more balanced in a way. But of course, Peter gets the symbiote ability, which for me completely puts Peter on the same level with Miles in this category. However, along with the gameplay, the gadgets were also extremely balanced in this game. They felt less spammy in this game, and you had to use them a little more methodically, which I really like. And then of course, traveling through New York City was even better this time around, with wings that can be used in these little wind currents to launch pads placed around the map. There were so many different ways the Spider-Man could move around the city. What I'm basically trying to say is Insomniac managed to make a third Spider-Man game feel refreshing and almost entirely new, something that only the Arkham and God of War games have done. Granted, I haven't really played too many different franchises yet, and I think Arkham and God of War are the best examples for me personally at the moment. But these three franchises take what makes their games great and subtly introduces new features that don't take away from the core mechanics. But with talking about the improvements that were made from the first two games to Spider-Man 2, I wanted to dive a little deeper into more examples. The collectibles and side missions got a complete overhaul in this game, and thank God they did. These two things were the biggest letdowns in the previous game, and they were actually really fun in this one. I enjoyed having the Miles Morales tech parts being in this game and not having to have almost 10 different tokens to spend. No matter what collectible or side mission for the most part, you got the same tech parts and it allowed the leveling up system to be more cohesive. I of course wanted to touch on how much better the crimes in progress are too. Rather than being a pain with annoying subjectives, they were able to be completed pretty quickly and they felt more like a pit stop rather than a fork in the road. And let's talk about those side missions, man. They are completely night and day and I thoroughly enjoyed them in this game. The side missions actually create emotion and a sense of truly caring for what was happening within them. Rather than being a mission about getting more tech parts, I wanted to find this woman's grandpa even more so. It just really put a smile on my face to see Insomniac improve upon these two parts of the game so much, and I feel like they truly listened to the community for this one. And then of course, Mary Jane Watson. I'm so happy with how they wrote her character in this game. Like how one of the game devs said, I don't give a damn if she's OP. Rather than feeling like a nuisance, MJ had so many integral parts in this game. She snuck into the zoo to find out information on Craven, went into the Venom Hive / cave thing to find the Rock, and even went full John Wick mode on the hunters in the neighborhood. Of course, she does seem overpowered and it may not make sense all the time. These missions were just flat out fun and they didn't feel like a chore. Oh, and also the boss fight when she was Scream was really cool. I had never heard of Scream prior to this and it was not a disappointment whatsoever. Of course, you could say that this was Venom's doing, but the fight even created great character development between Peter and MJ. Overall, I just think they improved upon MJ's side missions, or not even side missions, just little main missions that were spread out in the game. I just think they made them a lot better in this one. But speaking on boss fights, wow, were they good in this game. I mean, come on, man. We fought Sandman, Kraven, Mr. Negative, Scream, Venom, and Lizard. These are some heavy hitters, man. And I'm gonna be completely honest, there wasn't one bad boss fight in the game either. With Spider-Man PS4 and even Miles Morales, I felt like there were some meh boss fights at times. Each boss fight in this game felt incredibly unique, fun, and even difficult at times. And one interesting way Insomniac kept these fights so creative and different was implementing different stages and playing as different characters. With the Kraven fight, for example, Peter fought Kraven for a couple rounds, and then we fought Peter as Miles. It was this revolving door of changing up the boss fights with some new element. There were no repetitions shared between fights, and they were all pretty unique. And how can we forget fighting Kraven as Venom? Who the hell would have thought we'd be playing as Venom, man? That had to have been the most surprising part of this game, and it was such a fun gameplay feature, and I'm so happy they added it. I mean, even quickly talking about how powerful Venom felt, man. Like, you felt like you were Kratos on some steroids, man, fighting as Venom. And even when you were fighting as Peter with the symbiote suit, you felt like Kratos on the Spartan Rage ability. It was just really cool to see, man. But one thing that might be kind of underrated in this game, because it is a superhero game, is the character relationships and even the story in general. This whole game was about Miles and Peter balancing the life of being Spider-Man and how to find the balance between them both being Spider-Man. Early on in the game, Peter was trying to help Miles with not looking for revenge against Martin Lee, and Peter was truly being a role model in this scenario. But when Harry came around, which he was a great character and even a better Venom, Miles really didn't have a mentor for a lot of the game. Miles had to learn on his own time that vengeance is not the answer as Spider-Man, and being Spider-Man is all about saving others. This is where the Martin Lee and Miles dynamic came into play, and it was a fantastic addition to the game. I personally wasn't the biggest fan of Lee in the Spider-Man PS4, but the redemption arc in 2 was perfect. It was cool how Lee's powers kind of infused with Peter and Miles, and they got some major upgrades from it as well. Also, the whole dynamic of Miles and Harry both kind of getting jealous of seeing how the other person had the close relationship with Peter. Of course, Harry was more jealous, but you get the point. Early on in the game, though, I did feel like Miles was getting the short end of the stick with Harry getting the main character treatment almost, but oh man, was he involved in the second half of the story. Miles basically became the main hero of the story, and honestly, he kind of saved Peter many times in the story as well. Like, I honestly think Peter needed Miles more than Miles needed Peter, which that's honestly kind of subjective, so you guys can disagree with me in the comments, but personally, that's how I feel. And I also am a little bit of a Miles lover here, so I might be a little biased, but back to Harry and the Osborns in general. I loved how they gradually went to the villain side of the story. Of course, Harry definitely felt bad at the end for pairing with the symbiote, but Norman for sure is going full Green Goblin mode in the next game. But lastly, we have Kraven. His entire story and character in general was really cool to see for the first time. Knowing nothing about Kraven, I really wasn't expecting this villain that could kill almost every other supervillain in the game, which I wish we got to see all the deaths on camera, but whatever, I guess. That definitely is some kind of misstep from Insomniac, but it is what it is. However, from learning that he has some form of cancer and providing us with the reasons as to why he hunts, it really showed the why of Kraven and even the how and what. I had no clue he was such a cool villain, and he is for sure up there as one of my favorites now. And with all of these things that I loved about the game, what don't I like? I'm gonna be honest, I don't really dislike many things in the game. I would say the main kind of dislikes or things that could be improved were the overall facial look of the characters. I felt like sometimes the mouths weren't moving with what they were saying sometimes. And I don't know if it's because I was playing on a certain like video mode, but some of the buildings kind of looked flat and kind of like they had a lack of shadows at times, almost like they were clay. It was kind of weird. I don't know if that was just me playing on a different setting or something. You guys can let me know in the comments. But of course, I did mention how we didn't really get to see many of the supervillains being killed. I wish we got to see that. Maybe even a boss fight or something, or some kind of flashback. But overall, there really isn't many bad things to talk about in this game. I really thought Insomniac did a great job, and yeah, I really can't complain, man. But one last thing to talk about is the end credit scene. For me, it was really cool even seeing how Norman Osborn had the courage to go up to Doc Ock in prison to find out who the Spider-Men are. And it was pretty cool seeing Doc Ock not not rat out his spider boys. Granted, I think the two of them are going to fight with each other in the next game. I think they're going to team up somehow. Not too sure how that's going to happen. But then we also had the other scene where we got introduced to Miles's mother dating her new kind of boyfriend thing, and how he has a daughter, and how that daughter is also a spider person as well, I think. I think her name is Silk. I was not familiar with her at all prior to my chat telling me that there's another spider person. So I guess we have a third game set up now at this point, or technically a fourth. So that's kind of cool. But now moving on to what I really love about my kind of review videos and just things I like doing with games when I finish them. It's just ranking and reviewing them on my tier list. And for me today, I think Spider-Man 2 is an S tier game, and I would even put it above Red Dead Redemption 2. Now, I'm not saying that Spider-Man 2 is a better game than Red Dead 2, but for me personally, my own experience and how much I enjoyed it, I like Spider-Man 2 more. Granted, I think any game in this S tier spot really has no complaints whatsoever, so don't get mad at me for me putting this above Red Dead 2. I think they're both very close. It's just I'm a superhero lover at heart. But at the end of the day, is Spider-Man 2 better than Batman Arkham City or any of the Arkham games in general? Honestly, I can't really tell you, man. I haven't played some of the Arkham games in quite a while, and personally, I don't know if I love them because of nostalgic reasons. I personally don't think that's the reason, which is why I'm gonna go back and play a lot of the Arkham games soon, and I want to fully give my opinion on whether or not I think Spider-Man 2 is up with the greats. At the moment, I think it is up with the greats. I could even see how someone could say it's top 2, right behind Arkham City. If it's below Arkham Asylum and Arkham Knight, maybe even Origins, I don't know. At the end of the day, Spider-Man 2 is an amazing game. It was a very fun experience. I wish I had Spider-Man 3 or something to play, but I guess we'll just have to wait, and I hope Insomniac kills it on the next one because they killed it on Spider-Man 2.